There you go. Looks like you're live now.
Greetings, Tony Mobley here. We are starting our conversation tonight. This is technology for people at any age. And so we're going to get started tonight, and I'm going to do a quick handoff to my friend and make him the host. And as I do that, all right, we are good. So first, let me say thank you to all of the wonderful panelists that are here. And let me say special thanks to our guests, our special guest, Mrs. Emily Russo. Thank you so much for agreeing to be here. It is a pleasure to have you here. So let me just begin with why we're here. So I've been, and I wanted to say blessed, but I'm not going to say blessed. I'm going to say that I am fortunate to have had the opportunity to experience a group of individuals that are part of a community that was created by Alex Lindsay. And it came from me at a time when I was struggling with cancer. And it was something that I was able to participate in. And when those of you who may have had family members who were struggling with cancer know that there are times when you are kind of feeling sorry for yourself. You know, why me? Why am I in this position? Why am I going through all of this? And office hours came along at a time when I actually needed it. And one of the things that happened was that I had an opportunity to continue to grow. I was in need of finding a place in which to use my energies. And so I found it in office hours. And so as a result of finding office hours, I would begin to share with my family and friends all of the wonderful things that I was experiencing in office hours. And I was talking to them so much that they were getting tired of it. But it's an amazing institution. And I think one of my office hours friends, Tim, said that you spend a lot of money in office hours. And he said that the money that you spend in office hours is paying tuition for the things that you learn. And I think that is true. I think that is so true. So why are we here? We're here because, as I shared with you, that I would constantly share with my family and friends all of the wonderful things that were going on in office hours. And I was convicted by one of my brothers who there are 7 of us, and we have a Zoom meeting every Sunday night, no matter what. We have this 7 o'clock Zoom meeting on Sunday nights, and we can't miss. And we talk about how our week went. And I would always be talking about office hours. And so my brother, he said, you're sharing all of this with us, you need to share it with more people. And so a lot of different things sort of fell into place where I was fortunate enough to begin this journey. And so this is not an attempt at actually replicating office hours in any way. It is actually an attempt at trying to speak to the spirit of office hours and bring your everyday person into some of the benefits of the office hours experience. And by that, I mean, we're here to help regular people, ordinary people, get better with technology, regardless to where they are. That's why we're here. So last week, we had a powerful conversation with Hasma, came in from South Africa, Cape Town, last week, 3 a.m. his time. If you have not watched that YouTube video, please go back and watch it. It's worth it. This is worth it just for the conversation that he had. So we're here to help your everyday person get some of the benefits of the office hours experience. And so we want to help the grandmother and the grandchild. We want to help the adult. We want to help the person that's young. We want to help the person that's old. And even those people who might think that they are technology giants, we may be able to offer you a few little nuggets to help you along the way. But if you're struggling with technology, we want you here too. We want you to ask your questions. So that's why we're here. So before I go any further, I have to say a special thanks to Kimberly Mobley, who has allowed me to play and engage and learn in office hours. I want to thank Alex Lindsay in particular because he did not have to create office hours. He would have been fine if he didn't create it. But it is I have to be careful because we're not trying to be religious. So I have to say that it is a powerful testament to the human spirit for additional learning. So with that being said, I just want to allow Emily to go ahead and sort of do an introduction of herself and maybe just share a few nuggets that she wants to get started with. And then we will, when she decides that it's time for questions, we'll go with the questions. And I just want to say thank you so much, Emily, for agreeing to do this. You don't know how meaningful this is for me that you decided to do this. And I really appreciate you.
Oh, well, I appreciate you asking me to be here tonight. And, I agree with everything you just said. Like office hours, came to me in a time when I was like, what am I going to do with all these teachers who haven't been listening for the last 6 years? And how am I going to make this easy for everybody because of what we were going through? And it definitely calmed some serious anxiety that I was having about how this school year was going to work out. And it worked out because everything always ends up working out somehow. We always get there no matter what the reality is. But I am a technology integration specialist for a cooperative here in New York. And what that means is that I basically teach teachers how to integrate technology into their classroom as a tool, not as the focus of a classroom. So I'm not a technology teacher, but I do know technology. As we were talking kind of earlier tonight, I've had like every job under the sun. If someone offered me the opportunity to learn something, I was there for it. And so when I moved here to New York from Connecticut, I had been a high school English teacher for almost 7 years, and I couldn't find a job here in the Hudson Valley because there are a lot of young teachers and nobody was going anywhere. But I had a heavy background in technology. So I applied for a job where I got to play with toys all day, and introduce it to kids and kind of get kids excited about learning. And I think that kind of refreshed how I felt about education at that point. There's the 7-year itch in a lot of places where you get to this point where you're just like, oh, is this really what I want to keep doing? And in the classroom, I really enjoyed working with children. And that high school level, I loved because you could get some real interesting, deep conversations in an English classroom. But I would say that almost pales in comparison to seeing, a kid figure out how to use something like a makey board to make their poster talk, or how to create a video to explain to other kids how to do stuff. And once I saw that, I was just in it, all in here in New York. And so I support 8 districts in Ulster County, New York. And I don't know how many kids it is, like roughly 2,000 kids per district. But I get put in a different situation every year, so it never gets old. And I provide that training for their teachers to kind of inspire them to continue sparking wonder K through 12. So I've really gotten to work in all the grade levels with all the content specialists, and content areas, and kind of grow that way. So that's me kind of in a nutshell, sort of, at least the education side of me. And I brought some stuff tonight, and I did a bit.ly that I'm going to just take over the screen for a second. I think I'm going to put it in the chat first for everybody. But there's a bit.ly of resources about some of the things I'm going to talk about tonight. And so if I can share my screen, bit.lys are short URLs for those of you who may not be familiar with them. And what it does is it allows you to attach a website so people can get there. So it is case sensitive. So if you are writing this down, make sure that the bit.ly, not so much, but the / the T and Tony and the convo have to be capitalized. And that will bring you to a Wakelet. And in that Wakelet, I have some resources that I think will be helpful for students. So one of the things that I had a lot of anxiety about this year was the talk about learning loss. And I think the reason that learning loss bothered me so much was that every day my teachers and my students were learning new things. They were learning how to turn in assignments. They were learning how to troubleshoot their own technology. They were learning how to persevere despite losing connection or having to share a device with their siblings or whatever the problem was. And so when people asked me this year, what can I do to help my kid over the summer to gain back some of the learning loss? The first thing I want to tell parents is and anyone who wants to help out a young person is that summer slide has always been a thing, but it's not, and that's to be expected. Like they lose a quarter of what they learned. So if they learned, all about fractions, they might lose a quarter of that over the summer because they're not using it as frequently as they would use it in the classroom, and won't be refreshing it and referring to it. So anytime that you can do things in your regular everyday life that have those problem solving or creativity, or ask them to talk about something or explain something, you're really helping your child or your grandchild or your cousin or whoever you're helping out. You're helping them become stronger learners. So the first part on here, I just, if you encourage your child to read, the one thing I want to tell you is they should be reading consistently. So even 20 minutes a day, that's like one article. It's not even a lot of reading. But no matter what age they are, if they haven't begun reading yet, read to them for 20 minutes a day, and then have them read. And it does not matter if it's a comic book. Graphic novels are amazing. As a former ELA teacher, I definitely endorse anything that gets kids excited. And if they're into it, let them read it. There are some books that I watch my nephews read and I'm like, ugh, but they're reading. So that's the important part. If they're reading something, you're helping them out. Play games, card games, dominoes, awesome math games. Make sure that they go outside, and I'm going to talk about some apps tonight to get them excited about going outside if they tend to be more screen-based children. Talking about stuff, connecting with your kids, telling them stories about your childhood, having them interview other people in the family. And then, of course, your local library is an amazing resource. I think libraries are utilized for the programs that they offer. Our local library here is a real small library in the Hudson Valley, and they have a tech team. So they will teach you how to use your technology. So if you have a new phone or a new computer or a new tablet and you're like, there's probably a tech team right at your library, and it's probably a teenager that's doing some, extra hours that summer or offering services. They also offer things for kids. So there's usually art classes or Lego leagues or things that they can get involved with inside of your library. So always check those out. Now, the ones that I kind of want to focus, you guys can look at all this. So this is all linked. If you click on the title, it will bring you to all of the things I recommend. So this is just a reference sheet for you guys. But there are a couple of things that I wanted to actually touch on. This is okay, Tony, right? We're good?
Absolutely,
all
we
right.
are good.
Just making sure. All right. So Google Earth is a really cool resource for getting kids excited about other parts of the world. I was very fortunate to be from a family who encouraged me to travel, and I've been to quite a few places on the globe. But if you come in here into Google Earth, it is no longer this giant thing that sits on your computer and you need 10 million gigabytes of memory to make it work. It actually lives on the internet. So if you click on the little, it looks like a ship's wheel, like that you steer a ship with. It's called Voyager. If you click on that, it brings up these curated tours. So you can kind of go through and see all sorts of things that might interest your student, your child, whoever you're working with. I come in here all the time because I think it's just a really cool resource to kind of go in and see different parts of the world. And when you click on them, I want to do the cherry blossoms because that's one of my favorite. It will allow you to start exploring, and it shows you on the world where they're taking you. So obviously we're going to start in Japan. But then you'll notice at the bottom corner, there's 10 slides here, and we can explore this by moving it around. And we can even move, it's street view. So we can move along the street and we can jump down the street and just look around and actually visit Japan without going to Japan. And then you just hit the little arrow at the bottom and it will zoom out. I've only had one person complain about this zooming in, zooming out thing, but I can know it can be a lot for some people. And now it's dropped us in a different part of Japan, and it's talking about a 1,000-year-old weeping cherry blossom tree. And this is my absolute favorite tree. My parents have a tree similar to this in their front yard. And just the idea that this could be around for 1,000 years is amazing to me. So this gives you the breakdown. You can send this and share this with people, and you can also just go through the area. So I think this is neat because the kids can kind of, click around and see what else is around besides the tree. So the other thing that's in here, which is really cool, is this little die over on the left-hand side. It says, "I'm feeling lucky." When you throw the die, it just randomly throws you somewhere in the world. And we're going to go to Shanghai. and go to Shanghai Tower, and it will move around. And again, you can kind of zoom in and explore, get that street view. If you get to grab the little dude, you can drop him and it will bring you right down to that ground level. And you can, again, explore anywhere you want in the world. So you don't need a passport to leave. It's just kind of cool that you can go pretty much anywhere in the world. And then it does have some games built in. There's Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, which the kids like. And you can figure out where she is based on some clues. Another game or website that's really cool too is Geo Guesser, which if your kids are a little more worldly or have exposure, they can figure out, play games and figure out where they are. And it works for the entire world. So I'll do the UK. Oh, I can't now. Sorry, I'm not signed into my account. You do have to create an account to play, but it keeps track and you can be part of a daily challenge and get onto a scoreboard. But basically it lets it drops you somewhere in the world and you have to figure out where you are by exploring. So sometimes that's reading signs. Sometimes it is looking around for landmarks. And things like that. And they even have leagues now, which is kind of cool. So, yeah, it looks like all of them I don't have one that's open that I can play without logging in. Sorry, should have logged in ahead of time. But this one's a really cool way for kids to kind of play and get used to, like, what are some of the landforms? What are some of the important landmarks, and just kind of explore the world and get better at it. So that's a really cool option. So I mentioned that getting the kids outside can sometimes be a little bit of a hassle. I have two apps for getting the kids outside. The first one is called Geocaching. And this is something that was really popular a few years ago, and then it kind of fell off and it came back. And there are thousands of caches hidden. And what it is it's people can create their own cache. And so they'll give you clues and you go find it. So you're out in a park. So this park is down the street from me. And if I go to their page, I can see they'll give me the coordinates of where it is. They'll tell me how difficult it is. So every time, I have a friend who just drove here from Kentucky with her daughter, and they found all of these weird places along the way that I would never think to send them to, that were really, really interesting places. And the way that they found them was they looked for caches along their route. So if you're out and about, almost every city in almost every country now has geocaches, and there are different, explanations. There'll be a map. There'll be what you need to bring. Sometimes you need to you take something and give something. So it might be a sticker collection, and you might have to bring stickers to put inside and take the stickers out that are inside when you find it. So it's like a treasure hunt. So that gets kids really excited to go outside and kind of explore. You can see here in the little video, the woman's finding the box, and a lot of them also have logs in them. So you fill out the log when you find one of the treasures, and then you sign and show that you were there. And some of them are really complicated, and some of them are really just straightforward and easy. So it's open to anyone. And sometimes one time I even found quite a bit of money in one of them. So I left most of the money. I took a little bit of money and I left some stickers, but it was like $100 and something. And I think we decided to take 25 and replace it with whatever we had brought, which I don't remember what we brought to put in it. Just so it's fun for everyone. So there's usually these little boxes that you can find and different things. So that one's really, really fun to keep kids excited and engaged outside. And then the next one that I want to show you guys is the Seek app. So I use this. This is Pokemon Go in the real world, right? So if you guys know what Pokemon Go is, you had to go around and collect all the Pokies and then train them and do whatever. Seek is an app where you can scan different things in your yard or when you're on a hike, and it will tell you about it. So if it's a bug, if it's a mushroom, if it's a flower or a weed, or an animal, you can take a picture of it and it will identify it for you. And then you get badges based on how many of things you find. It will also tell you about that species and if it was introduced or if it's invasive. It will also show you where you can find more of them in, like if they're in your area or if you're unique and have something. And so my nephews use this. Once I told them it was Pokemon in real life and they could earn badges, and they said it wasn't as fun as Pokemon in real life, but honestly, they do it more than they do Pokemon. So I'm assuming that, you know, they just don't want to think that I'm as cool as I think I am. So that one's a really cool app to have on your phone when you're traveling around the neighborhood, your backyard, anywhere. And last night, the librarian in town posted some wild garlic and she didn't know what it was. And I only knew what it was because I'd been using the Seek app for a few years. And so I told her what it was and then I told her how I knew, and now she's promoting it all over town for the kids. But wild garlic looks pretty alien-like. If you haven't seen it before, I recommend you go check that out. The next thing that I want to talk about is that wonder thing. So getting kids to wonder about stuff and understand, like they might have a question, they might come to you with a question and they're just like, you know, why is it that we do this? Or how do we, why is it that we always, you know, hang up the phone? One of the kids asked me the other day, why do we say hang up the phone? Because you push a button to turn it off. And I was like, yeah, you don't see many phones, do you? So I had to explain how phones used to hang on the wall and that you could only go as far as your kitchen cord phone would let you go. And then we got cordless and it got weird with the cell phones, but we keep the vernacular. And so anyway, this website, if you sign up at the top, it's called The Kids Should See This. And if you sign up at the top, every week they send you a handful of videos that teachers and parents curate about things that kids have asked about. So there are sometimes really, really interesting videos about, you know, why we do something the way we do. Like you can see on the screen, can you solve the count for the counterfeit coin riddle? Can you solve the frog riddle? So if your kid's into figuring out logic problems, plenty of those. Fun with arches, understanding engineering. You have math things. There's an iPhone of slide rules video down here, and then other things about environment and stuff like that. What I like about it is that they organize it by topic. So if a kid, one of your kids comes to you and is like, you know, oh, well, why did the dinosaurs end up the way they did? If you go to the animation series, oh, and this one my nephews love because they did the history of the toilet from ancient Mesopotamia to modern day. And who doesn't like a good toilet story? Little boys in middle school think it's from elementary, middle school think it's amazing. But we also did the day the dinosaurs died. And so there are things in here sorted, but you can also just hit that random button and it will bring up a video. It will tell you a bit about that video. What I really like is that there's no ads. So if you're worried about, you know, younger kids watching stuff, when you push play, you don't get the ads. And you can read about it before you watch it. And sometimes there'll be connections to other things. So for instance, there's this one connects also to a rooftop farm and vertical farming in Newark and Washington, D.C. So there's usually bonus information in here as well to connect to something. If they're interested, it takes them to the next layer. So this website's amazing for keeping your kids occupied over the summer and trying to get them interested in thinking. And then the next stuff that I just wanted to touch on is coding. I think coding's interesting. I'm in a weird spot with coding. I think coding is great for a basic course. Like, so teaching kids the if then and the logic behind coding, understanding the fundamentals is amazing. I get a little weird when people are like, oh, it should be a required course. And I'm like, not for everybody, maybe an elective. I think everyone should be exposed to it at some point. So when I'm exposing my students to code, one of the websites that I use is the Google for Education CS First program. And I do that because they have really interesting activities for the students to try, and they use the Scratch platform. So the Scratch platform has block coding. So the students don't need to type code. They learn by dragging and dropping different blocks into different orders, learning how to repeat steps and, set parameters and things like that. And it's not bogged down coding. And they have interesting activities. So I linked on the Wakelet that you guys have, I linked to this particular sheet for parents because you don't need to be an educator to use the CS First coding activities, and you don't have to create an account. Now, if your student already goes to a school where they have a Google account, if they log in with their Google account, they're able to save their work. If they don't log in with a Google account, then they won't be able to save their work. So they'll just have to start over. But most of these activities can be completed in about an hour. You'll notice the last one, though, is a game design for beginners. And that's 8 to 12 hours. So I definitely would recommend, and it's broken up into hour segments, but that one I definitely recommend making sure you have an account before you try to tackle that one. They're not order specific, so you don't have to do them in a certain order, but they do set them up so that you learn better by doing them in order. But you may find that your student is really good at something already because they may have had some exposure, and then you can just jump ahead to something that's of more interest to them. So Google for Education CS First for parents, I gave you guys a direct link to this page so that you could go ahead and read about how to get started. Apple just released, well, didn't just release, but they have this Swift Playgrounds app, and I'm just going to switch my screen real quick. And this one's a little more in depth as far as explanation goes than, say, the CS First option. And what I like about it is the way that they explain things. So if you have a kid who's not sure they're into coding, this kind of breaks it down into a way that is more digestible. So it relates things to real life. So for instance, in this one, they relate it to like things you do without even thinking, like automating tasks, like tying your shoes. And once you go through the loop, swoop, and pull options, and I'm just going to go through here, then they show you what a function is. So this here is function tie my shoes, loop, swoop, pull is the order that you do it in. And then it breaks it down into what you're doing, and then it gamifies it. So now once we go past this, we're going to go to start coding, and it gives you the directions and the challenge, and this should load. I'm just going to hit the run my code. There we go. So you have this little guy, this little alien monster thing, and you have to figure out how to get him to his gemstones or whatever activities they're asking you to do. And when you hit enter the code, they actually have the code written for you. So you can do the forward move, forward move, forward move, turn left, forward, 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 click gem. And you can run it at any time to make sure that what you're doing is correct and you didn't miscount while you were trying to demonstrate. And he jumps off into the river. Oh, I turned him left the wrong way. So he's going to fall right off the cliff. Yeah. So it's, one of those things that you can, play around and see and like where your mistakes are. And that's why I like this one, because you can go back and then decide, okay, turn left. And right now I can't make it easier, like put in the actual number, but I can, take out the code and add 2 more turn lefts. Hopefully that'll get them in the right direction. And if I want to check it, I just hit the run code again, and you can speed it up so you don't have to watch it real slow. Like, so if you're Alex, you can make him go faster. And there, now he got his gem and he's happy. So this one appeals more to the middle school age kids, although honestly, I've been playing around with it for the last few weeks and I'm like, oh yeah, this is totally fun. I'm going to keep trying. And it progresses and it has multiple levels. And the more you get into it, the more you understand why the code is written the way it is and what order it's written in. And so you get the written code along with the actual movement. Whereas in the Google one, the Google one, they're using Scratch. So it's block code. So it's just blocks and the kids plug in the blocks, and it's similar, but they don't see the actual writing out of code and things like that. And so just keeping an eye on the time. The other ones that I've mentioned on the Wakelet were Grasshopper app, which is more for middle school, high school, which gives them the coding fundamentals in JavaScript. And then Replit, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, has a really cool website because you can code with a friend. So let me just switch my screen again. Where was I? Where did my screen go? This one? Yes. So you can see on this screen, it kind of uses that. If you've used Google shared documents before, it has those flags the same way. And you can work with a friend on coding. So if you're trying to build something together, you can code and create together. It does 50 different languages. So if you want to learn a specific language, you can do that. And it also has learning resources. So there's different people that are willing to answer your questions. There are short videos you can watch. They even give you bad code and let you try to figure out where the bug is, which I think is really helpful if you have a kid who, gets the coding, understands what's going on. Then it gets really, more in depth when they have to figure out where they put that errant period somewhere in their code that is making things not work the way they want to. So the ones that I gave you all are at least start out free. So you can try them out, see if you like them. The last one was Scratch Junior, which is on the iPad, which I don't have with me, but Scratch is neat because you can take someone else's build and edit it. So once you've learned the basics of Scratch and how Scratch works, and you like the way someone did something, you can actually take their code and then remix it into what you want it to do. So kids are always remixing games, making them more difficult, or adding different characters to the games and things like that. And I think that that's a really great way for them to learn from each other. And Scratch is created by MIT, and anyone can get an account. You don't need to have a fancy computer to run it. And you can just go in and explore the library of things that have already been built and get inspired to build something. We usually have the kids try to solve a problem with Scratch. So one time we had them use Makey Makeys with their Scratch. Makey Makeys is just a little circuit board that looks like a game controller. And we had them create accessible gaming devices for students who were not as mobile, or were missing, had missing arms or things like that, where they couldn't do a traditional gaming piece. And so the kids came up with different ways that those kids could still participate, whether it was playing with their feet or just making bigger buttons for people who had trouble with eye-hand coordination. And it was just a fun way to get kids thinking, how can I use this to help someone else? So setting up those kind of challenges over the summer, having your kids wonder about something like, we were talking about in New York City, not every sidewalk is accessible. So what could we build that would survive a New York winter and make all of the sidewalks accessible to everyone? And the kids came up with some really interesting things that we then tried to build in like Tinkercad, which is a 3D, like a CAD software, but for children. And the other thing that I just want to say, and I feel like I'm babbling a little, but
you're not, you are on target. You are doing just what I hoped for. So thank you so much.
Good.
You don't know how happy I am. I'm trying to stay calm, but I couldn't have asked for a better portrait for what you're doing. Thank you so much. Please continue.
All right. So Yeah. So the one thing that I want to say about kids and technology and adults, we all, if you're my age or older, we all grew up in a time where if you hit the wrong button in a DOS program, you might lose your entire paper and not be able to retrieve it. I don't know if that happened to any of you, but I remember tears in my senior year of high school and my dot matrix printer and everything. It just hot mess, right? So I think we're more tech phobic because of that. Now, a lot of us have gotten over the tech phobia, but there are plenty of people out there who are like, if I push the button, it could end the world. And I'm like, no, it doesn't work like that anymore.
Hey, Emily,
Yeah.
could I have you stop sharing
Yeah.
for a little
Yep.
while?
Sure. Yes, there we go. So, yeah, that pressing that button and losing everything. So when I work with teachers, they're usually my age or older. It's really hard to convince them that the kids are capable of using the technology without you having to know everything. And so, I went to Catholic school and there was a lot of, let go and let God kind of talk. And I've changed that. I co-opted it with my teachers and I said, let go and let kids. Because the kids, if you give them access to the tool, they will surprise you every single time. I had a friend's child pick up an iPad and create a beat on GarageBand, and none of us showed him how to do it. He just sat there and pressed the buttons until he came up with something he thought sounded good. And when he played it, we all were like, well, where'd you get that from? And he was like, no, I just added loops and then I did this and then I added some guitar. And, I think sometimes we think we need to know everything. We need to know all of the ins and outs of a program. And we're afraid to let the kids just use the tool. But every single time I've let kids just brief, this is what you need to do. Here's the goal. They come back and they do more than I asked them to do. And they're interested in creating. They want to build something. They want to make something. They don't want to sit there and be lectured at. They don't want to sit there and play. The reason they play video games so much actually is that they like the ability to figure it out. There's something in there that's engaging them that makes them want to figure it out. So when people ask me, well, how much is too much screen time for kids? I am not an expert. I think it should be a balance, as with everything in our lives. Too much ice cream, not great. But too much running, not great for you either. So having kids, balance out what they're doing in their digital life as well as what they're doing in real life is important. But if your kid's really interested in video games, get them into Scratch and have them start creating their own video game. If they like, to figure out problems, there's a website called Breakout Edu, where it's like an escape room for students, and you have to buy access to most of their games, but you can create your own games. And I know plenty of kids who are amazing game masters. They just make the most cool games out of their history project or their math lesson or whatever. You give them the ability to show what they know in a medium that they're drawn to, and they will surprise you every time. So the last thing that's on that list, and I won't share my screen again just because I can tell you guys about it, is I put in some videos, websites. There are some people like Smarter Every Day. He was a rocket engineer, and I think he's in Alabama. And he does tons of videos where he works through the problem. He doesn't just give you the answer. He doesn't go, hey, look at this. This is amazing. He just did one on grass seed being rockets. If you touch certain weeds, they shoot their seeds out. We have a jewel weed here that if you touch the pod, it's spring loaded and it pops out 3 seeds. And my entire yard was covered with them one year because my nieces and nephews were out there popping the seed pods. But he did a whole video on why that happens, but let the kids figure it out as they watched it. ABC Australia Science Channel has a show called Elevator Pitch, and there's a girl who interviews people who are like, she just did quantum physics, I think, or something. And she had them explain in an elevator ride up and down a 45 flight building or 43 flight building. They have to like basically explain what it is in that amount of time. And so it's just a really interesting, like quick overview, but they're done really, really well. And then things like Crash Course and In a Nutshell, those are all really great. And then there's amazing podcasts too. If your kid likes stories or likes to wonder, or you have long car trips planned this summer, I suggest downloading a bunch of podcasts, depending on the age group. But the ones that are made for little kids, there's like Wow in the World, Smash Boom Best, But Why, and Brains On. And those 4 podcasts I listen to on the regular. Sometimes they're a little bit too kiddie for me, but their topics are really great. They ask kids, like, but why, you can submit your own question to. So they let you, but why does why do we have hiccups? And they'll do a 15-minute episode on what a hiccup is and how it works, but in a way that appeals to young kids. And I find myself drawn in every single time. And then I put in some older kid stuff. If you have kids struggling to understand or fascinated by history or the Supreme Court or how the government works, I put in a couple of podcasts for that. And now I feel like I've been talking a lot. And I
you've been talking the right amount. And let me just say, those last few things that you shared, we want to have those links as well.
They're on that that at the bottom. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And so we're in an extremely good place. And we want to just take a moment to say thank you so much, Emily. This is, and thank you, Chris. Chris, thank you so much for sharing your wife with us. We appreciate it. We don't take it for granted. Thank you so much, Chris. We are having a problem with the panelists being able to put questions in the Q&A. So what we're going to do is we're going to let my good friend read the couple of questions that we have. And then we're going to go, we're going to ask panelists to raise their hand when they want to ask a question. And we're going to ask that you be very succinct because we want to be respectful of Emily's time. And we also want to be respectful that Hasmok is still here after it is 3 a.m. his time. So he told me that he might be here in his dreams. And so he is actually here. So we want to lift him up. And thank you so much, everyone that's here. And Alex Lindsay is here as well. So thank you, Alex, for being here. And so we're going to go with the first questions that we have, and then we're going to look at the questions that the panel have. And if you guys don't, I have a question that involves Hasmok and Emily. And so you guys better ask your question before I ask my question. Okay?
Tony, can I jump in real quick? People are asking if we get if Emily's okay if we put her link into the comments in YouTube. Okay.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, we'll go ahead and do it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could ask everybody who's attending to please post your questions if you have them for Emily. And I posted a few questions myself, so I think we can go ahead and raise hands in the panel if you want. So.
All right, so let's get our first question.
All right, the first question is from Tlaloc Lopez Waterman. What is the number one thing you can tell people who are afraid to turn their cameras on, like in class, with a lot of in virtual event kind of class ideas? When I know that it's uncomfortable for some, And so I just wanted to hear your opinion on that.
Well, I flip-flopped on that a lot this year. I was very anti having kids have to turn on their cameras as a requirement. And I still think that that shouldn't be a requirement. However, that said, if you make your classroom or your whatever you're doing where the students may be joining in or people may be joining in, just people in general, making it a safe space. So when I tell teachers to do it, I'm like, well, do it as an opening. So like they were like, well, how do I know the kid was there? How do I know that they were participating? And that I think can be remedied with a back channel. So if you have a back channel running, and by back channel, I mean, it could be a shared document. There used to be a website called Today's Meet, which I think is still up and running. There are different ways that you can interact that don't require you being live on camera. I leave my camera view in there. I know in Zoom you can turn it off. In Gmeet, you don't really have the option. Although I think they're adding more features, but just making it a comfortable thing. So telling kids some of the things that, will make them more comfortable. Like try to find a quiet space. If you're worried about your room, go sit in front of a blank wall like I'm doing right now. If you have a lamp, turn it, towards the back of you so you're lit well and you're not. I always joked with them. I'm like, you're in the witness protection program. I can't see who you are. And they'd laugh and then they'd move the light. And honestly, messing around with like, right at the beginning of class saying you're going to have like a sound check. Like, I just need to make sure your mics are working. So, just mute, unmute, and let me know you're there, and go in order and just go around the room and ask them to share something. I did a lot of TikTok inspired classroom activities where I would say, all right, if you like chocolate, I need you to sit to the left side of your screen. And if you like, you hate chocolate, I want you on the other side. And if you're in the, in the middle, and then they'd all run and turn on their cameras and like move. And then they're like, oh no, my camera's mirrored. And they move to the other side. And, you just kind of make it fun. And then they're more willing to turn it on. And then just checking in with kids, because whether they're little kids or college or high school or college, everybody had a really tough year this year, and we don't know what everybody's individual story was. I had one kid who had 6 siblings in the same room as him while he's taking his class. He never turned his camera on and rarely turned his audio on. He was active in the chat, but he just didn't want us to see, what was going on in the back of his, that he was basically babysitting his 5 other siblings and cousins or whoever else was there. And so I think we as educators and people who are hosting meetings need to realize, not everybody has that luxury of being in a quiet space in a place where they feel comfortable turning the camera on.
Thank you, Emily. Next question.
This is from Mason Lancaster. Any questions for an Ulster for regaining that children's beginner's mind when trying to learn new stuff?
I'm not sure I followed that question. Sorry.
I think what they're saying is for those that are a little further along in age.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Well, it's a good way to sort of get moving on trying to learn things that are maybe not so comfortable for them.
Let me just say this about Mason. I met him actually yesterday on a post show in office hours. And he is, like myself, an older person who has an enthusiasm for learning new things. And he was sharing a lot of office hours recent purchases with me. So I just wanted to frame that question by giving you a little background.
Yeah. So rekindling wonder in the adults. So I struggled in my classroom to follow my curriculum and keep kids engaged, because you're being dictated what you can teach and what you can't teach and how much you can move away from what's expected. So like, for instance, I always had to teach a research paper. I know kids need to know how to research, but I don't think research paper is like the answer necessarily, especially for 9th and 10th grade students, because they haven't even learned how to write properly yet. And so it's painful for a teacher to read all those papers, let alone, teaching the kids how to write that paper. So I think, for me, it's when you have an idea, when you're looking at something and you're like, oh, I wonder why that's interesting to students, or I wonder why that's becoming a trend. Or you're on Twitter and someone mentions something, or, just being involved and then following that rabbit hole. So I go down rabbit holes all the time, especially with that The Kids Should See Us website. There are so many videos that get me thinking about other things. And then I end up following that from the beginning to the end. And sometimes the end's nowhere in sight and you just kind of drift off on it. But I think we just have to ask ourselves sometimes, like, I wonder why we do that. Or I wonder what that means. You see those signs on the road, the blue sign. Well, in New York, they're blue. In some states, they're brown. But it's like, this is a historic site for blah, blah, blah. And I've just found out recently that the ones in New York could be sponsored by anyone. So they're not necessarily 100% accurate. And so if you dig into that a little deeper, you start to find out more and more about things and you can really start exploring a little deeper. I also like things like Instagram, where I'm not following people, but I follow areas. So for instance, where I live in New York, I'll follow a whole bunch of different town or local community things, and I start to see what's going on and then the history of things. So I'm interested in history a lot, about how we got here. And so sparking wonder, I think, is just about asking questions and not just accepting that whatever someone told you is what is the actual story behind it. I hope I answered that all right.
Yes. Talak, go ahead.
So I'd like to speak to this question as well. I think sometimes what happens is as we get older, we think that we need to get it right the first time. And I think that if we can instill in the people that are younger than us, that they can fail, learn, do it again, do better, and continue on, I think that should also be passed along to those of us that are older, or those of us that are really old, or wherever you are in life. I think trial and error, fail forward, keep working at it, and be excited about where you can get, because you didn't stop the first time it didn't work.
Absolutely. Jeff.
Emily, I think what you said earlier about how technology has improved and we're not going to mess it up. What I told my kids growing up is there's no self-destruct button. You're not gonna, you're not gonna mess it up. So what is it? Speaking to Mason, that children's beginner's mind. To me, I hear play. Kids play, and so just dive in and play. Don't worry about breaking it. Don't worry about, you will learn more when you mess it up a little bit and have to get it back, as long as you give yourself the freedom to play.
Exactly. I had a saying on the top of all of my webinars, and it was like, push all the buttons, you can't break it. And if you can, then we have something to send in to help. So just push buttons and see what happens. You'll see so much more playing.
And Mason is saying, yes. Okay. So, panelists, if you have some questions, you can raise your hand and we will try to. All right, Jeff, go ahead.
My question is about assessments in online education and how to improve them, and kind of a corollary to that, what are your thoughts on sort of the lockdown browser, the video camera aimed at the student as they're taking an exam, all that kind of stuff?
Oh, I got thoughts. I got lots of thoughts. So first of all, I think, if you ask a question that's Googleable, it's not an assessment question. It's not the way that you should be formulating your assessments anyway. I think we need to look at assessing students online in a completely different way, where they're using the information they might Google to help them answer a question that you might be asking them. Maybe they need to look up specific data or look for information somewhere and then take that information and synthesize it into an answer, showing that they can take that information that you gave, you know, the basis of your question and the information that you gave them, and that they can find reliable resources to use, that they can answer that question fully, that they're answering the actual question you're asking, because I don't know how many essays I've read that babbled on for pages and never answered the question that I asked. And so teaching the students how to do that and, accepting that from them online. Now, I work at a BOCES and I have virtual students this year, and we use a program, which I won't name, but I was very disappointed in their assessments, because as the English teacher of record for these students, I have no control over the information that they gain through the program, but I have to assess their essays for clarity and point, because the computer can't do that, right? A computer can't really read. AI is not good enough right now to read a student's essay and go, yeah, they hit all the main points. It would suggest automatically, because the AI they're working on, it would suggest this student deserves a 90 because they wrote enough words. It didn't matter that the words didn't go in the right order. It didn't matter that they were talking about something completely different. It didn't matter if they wrote 5 sentences. As long as those 5 sentences were run-on sentences, it would go, this person deserves an 85. And I'd be like, And so you still need that human part to go through and find where is it that they're falling down? Where is the missing piece? Because I don't think AI yet, and I've taken quite a few AI courses and I'm a little interested in where it's going to go. But like right now, it does not have that ability to assess someone's thought in the way that they formulate their words together and then provide evidence of what they're trying to answer. So going forward, I think the locking down with the camera, the AP tests, the SATs, all the tests that were high stakes, I think doing them in a pandemic remotely in the way that they did was not forward thinking. Last April, May, sure. Okay. We were in the middle of it, but this year they had a whole year to think about how can we do this in a way where the kids are synthesizing that information and we can see it without, just going blanket. Oh, we have to train a camera on them and see what they can do without, Googling it. That program also, just as an aside, I took the question. I wasn't familiar with the piece of work they gave the students to read on one of the final essays. And so I Googled the essay and it came up with that name of that company, the question the students had, and you could pay $5 to get an original essay online. So I was like, none of my kids did that because their writing was not that good. But like the fact that, for $5, you can get someone to write your essay for you and you just submit it. What are you telling me that I'd rather have a 5-minute interview with a student and have them defend something, as far as persuasive essay writing goes. Like, all right, tell me how you're going to defend this. And I would know more about that student and their ability than, that really not subpar online learning software. So, yeah.
Thank you. Great question, Jeff. Laura.
Can I just piggyback on what they were asking, Emily? What do you see as the technology has been touted as the great leveler? It levels the playing field, and I don't know that that's necessarily completely true. How do you see it? Are there drawbacks to this virtual world that we are in?
Great question. Yes and no. So I think, first of all, there is a huge digital divide in the United States, as in other parts of the world. But definitely, we had students here in New York who couldn't get on because they lived too much in the Catskill Mountains, like too far into the Catskill Mountains to have access. And some of the schools tried to remedy it by driving buses with Wi-Fi, and it just doesn't work because the connectivity isn't there. Also, I think, school districts being tied to funds, like inability to buy the best of what they should be giving students or the right tools for the right job. I constantly joke that, they tie my hands behind my back and then ask me to, bake a cake. And it's like, I can do the best I can with my feet, but that's kind of nasty. Right. So that's how I feel about Chromebooks in the classroom. If you're not going to buy the creative suite of tools to go along with it, you're really tying the kids' hands behind their back and the teachers, because they can't create. And I really feel like if we're going to move forward as technology being a tool, it is not a replacement for what we do in the classroom. It is not a replacement for education. But if we want to make it part of the classroom, we have to provide the right tools, and we need to provide the training, because there's also the term digital native, saying that students today are digital natives is kind of a misnomer, because they may know how to get to YouTube, and they may know how to play Minecraft, and they may know how to build a whole world in Minecraft. But if you ask them to find a reliable source online, or if you ask them to create a 2-minute video explaining a concept, they may not have those skills because no one's teaching them. Those courses have been removed. Computer science classes are not standard in every school district. They're not a core course, and so they don't exist everywhere. Students do what students can do. My first teaching job was 2007 and 2008, that school year. The following year, because I had worked in a computer repair and cell phone shop, I asked my old boss for all his old cell phones that had internet connection that people turn in. So like people would turn their phones in to recycle them when they bought a new phone, and we'd wipe them and we'd just connect them to the Wi-Fi in the building. And now I've given a computer to every kid in my class. And I was able to gamify the classroom by controlling the cell phone, like put your cell phone down. If they had their own cell phone, or if they needed one, they could borrow one in the classroom. They could make videos, they could look up information, but I gamified it. So I was like, all right, everybody has their cell phone down on the table in the black square. If I ask a question, the first person will get a bonus point on the next test. Bonus points meant nothing because they were bonus points. So it didn't really bump their grade one way or the other, but the kids would be like, at attention, just waiting for me to do something where I'm like, I'm not sure what that word means. Could you look it up? And like someone would swipe up their phone and they're like, according to Webster, and they would tell me what that definition was. And so I think, banning technology from the classroom is not the answer. Telling them they can't have their cell phones is not the answer. Telling them they can't be online during class, not the answer. It's about teaching them, what matters. Where do we get our information from? How do we get our information? Is it reliable? How do you know it's reliable? And making it fun for them, and then teaching them the skills. And if you don't know, be like, hey, we have, we video. Someone want to push all the buttons until it breaks. And the kids will be like, yeah, you'll get the one kid and he'll do something amazing, or she'll do something amazing. And then you get them to show everybody else. And they're just like, okay, this is awesome. And I'm like, yeah, it is awesome. And like I said, they'll surprise you every single time.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Laura tried to get me started. I'm just saying, Laura, you tried to get me started tonight. I'm not going to go there, but I could go there. But I'm going to control myself tonight.
I'm going to apologize to you, Tony. Nope. It's my passion. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much for your question. Thank you, Emily, so much for your answer. And so we try to keep this conversation going for about an hour. We're over the hour. I wanted to give the panelists a chance to ask a question or make a statement in regards to their thoughts on what Emily has shared, what their thoughts are on possibly continuing this kinds of conversation in regards to try to helping people, regardless to where they are in this whole chain of events, as far as helping their child, grandchild, niece, nephew, cousins, or whomever. Because I don't think that there are many conversations like what we're having tonight. And so I don't want it to end, but I also want to be respectful of your time. So I'm just going to ask the panelists, if you want to go, because Emily still has a special sharing that she's going to do at the end. And so if you want to go a little bit longer, or you just want to go ahead and get to the lab. You want to get to the lab? Okay, let's get to the lab. Okay, Emily, the lab is yours.
Just give me a second.
And so while she's getting ready, I just want to say, the reason why I asked that question was because last week we had such an engaging conversation, and there were people that had questions and I missed them. And I want to apologize for that. That's why I asked the question, because it was important to me. I want everyone to feel that if they have have a question or they want to make a statement, you are not going to be ignored. We want to hear from you. Yes, sir.
I wanted to quickly ask you if you could give us an overview of the information you gave us at the beginning of the conversation as to where those suggestions you gave us, Emily, were for what ages.
Oh, yeah. So the ages, I tried to keep it like for anyone. So a lot of the apps in the Wakelet, it will say like, this is for middle school, elementary, high school. But honestly, if you check them out, they're not graded. A lot of them are open to anyone who's interested in learning about what that topic is. So, and I'm sorry, I'm having a problem here. Hold on just a second. So it was geared towards K-12, but really They can be used almost with anyone. And I actually have a website that I've created of other resources that get into more specific topic areas. So like, for instance, May was Asian American Island Pacificer month. And like, I have like a Pacific Islander month. So I have like a whole bunch of resources for that specific month, and they're all different grade levels all the way up to college. And I'd be happy to share that with Tony. He can add it to the
Wonderful. Thank you.
The site. Yeah.
And then there's one last question in the
Sure.
Q&A that I'd like to ask, if that's okay, Tony.
Absolutely.
So this is from Laura Thompson in Texas. What is your best advice for a parent that is trying to do virtual school for their children?
Ooh. The best advice I have is question everything. I have seen teachers do amazing things this year, and I have seen some teachers phone it in. And like I said, this year is an exception in so many ways because, it's trauma. What we all went through this past year, it's trauma. Asking teachers to teach in person with a mask and to kids at home at the same time is insanity and should never have happened. I think it's malpractice against teachers, to be honest, and malpractice against the students, because trying to learn that way is just so hard. But I think, being involved as much as you can, asking questions, being able to explain a situation like the one I mentioned before. If the parent had just let the teacher know, it wouldn't have gotten to the place where we found out why the student wasn't participating in class, letting the teacher know, like, hey, I work during the day. He's home with the kids. That's his, I don't have anyone else. Those things go so far. Teachers are not monsters, most of them, despite what, you might see played out on TV or other places. But like letting us know what your situation is. Most people have empathy, if not sympathy, for what you're going through and what we're all going through, and exceptions will be made. And I think that happens a lot this year. If you just like, if you have a student with special needs, and I know Laura, you'll totally get this, but like a lot of teachers or a lot of parents with special needs students don't understand what their child is entitled to. And school districts don't necessarily look out for the child, and it's not out of malice, it's out of a budget. And so if you're not advocating for your child, whether they're gifted and talented or in special ed, or just need more time on a test, whatever it is, if you don't advocate for it, it's not going to just happen. And a lot of people don't understand that. And they're afraid. They think, oh, well, the teachers or the school, they know what's best. And it's not the way it works, unfortunately, in most districts. I wouldn't even say most, maybe half and half, but I've just seen a lot of things in my 14 years in education, and a lot of those things are not always in the best interest of the kid. And that doesn't even apply just to special ed. That's in general. There's a lot of things that are decided in education because that's money or that's time or that's what we can do with what we're given. And it's not about this is what's best for the kids. So,
Thank you, Emily.
Advocating, I think, is the biggest thing that a parent can do to support their student, especially in virtual school.
And I'm glad you said that, because I'm going to be speaking to that next week. And that's one of I'm glad to hear it from another educator.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I had no idea. Like, and I don't think a lot of parents, have know what's out there. And a lot of teachers don't know, because it's, like I said, if it's tied to money, it's not about the kids. It's about what's the easiest thing we can do and what can we. I don't want to say they do it just to get away with it, because I don't think that that's the intent. I don't think that's where people's heart are at, but they're not going to go out of their way to find you and go, oh, your kid needs more time to take this test. They're just going to be like, well, that kid just doesn't like school, and sometimes you need to advocate harder for that. And I'm sorry, Tony, but the website I have is not loading. So maybe I'm going to grab something else here.
Okay. So Laura has already revealed the big reveal that she's going to be our special guest next week. So while Emily's still looking for our lab for today, I just wanted to thank her in advance for agreeing to do it next week. And it's going to be about disabilities for adults and children. And I think that it will be another engaging conversation. And so I hope that all of you who are listening and all of you who might be listening on YouTube, watching and listening on YouTube, come into the Zoom so that you can ask your question. It's great, that you'll be able to watch it later, but we want you to come into the Zoom so you can ask your questions. That's why we're doing it this way, because we believe that talking through problems, actually having real conversations, is the way in which we can help one another. So that's why we're doing it this way. So again, thank you so much, everyone who's here. And Emily, just let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, I'm having trouble here.
Okay.
I might try something else real quick, if that's all right.
That's fine. And so while Emily is doing that, let me go. I really want to ask my question, but I know that we can't answer it tonight. So if I ask my question, that means that you guys will have to tune in on Saturday, office hours, and the education to get the answer to the question. So should I ask my question now? All right, I'm going to ask my question now. And that means you're going to have to do what? You're going to have to come in on Saturday during the education. It's not going to be on YouTube. So you're going to have to come in to office hours during education hour. Okay, so this is my question. And so my question is, last week, you asked Dr. Hazmat Gugir about being an agitator, and how did he find the courage to be an agitator for the apartheid system? And I'm asking you, how did you get the courage or find the courage to be an agitator for education? How did you find that courage? And if you can, share your path to make changes. And so you can ponder on that, and you can answer it now if you want to, but I don't think that you can answer it completely in the time that we have left. So guess what? I'm going to encourage all of you who are listening and watching, tune in to office hours on Saturday for education to get the answer. Now, Emily, if you want to give us a little tidbit for us to whet our appetites.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I was talking to my parents a couple of weeks ago, and my mom gave me an entire container of everything I did in K through 12, like all the stuff she kept. And she pulled out a file and she was like, so we didn't understand if you had ADD or ADHD, or if there was just like a reading issue because you were reading at a really high level. But you constantly were not performing to your level. And so we had you tested, and I was like, okay. And she was like, and it came back, and it turns out that you don't like authority. And I was like, really? Shocking. So apparently it's just the way I am. But I guess I'll hold on to this for the beginning of mic check on office hours on Saturday, so that you guys all have to tune in to see it. And I am really sorry. I don't know what's wrong, why it won't log into the account.
And that's fine. And you know, in a way, it's good that it happened, because I want to make sure everybody understands something. So
sometimes it doesn't work, even for a technology person.
This whole experience is a lab. It's a lab for us to make mistakes, to fail forward, and to come to some answers to solving some problems together. And so I have a little backup. I call it a daily dose. This is something that you can use daily. And so I'm going to say, I didn't say that I'm the originator of it, and I'm not going to admit to stealing it from Mac Break Weekly. But I am going to say that it was shared several years ago on Mac Break Weekly. And so it's an app. It's an iOS. Unfortunately, it is an iOS app only, but I'm sure that there's someone here that can find a Windows version of it. And so it's called App Advice. App Advice. And there you will find paid apps for iOS devices that are free for that day. And this happens every single day. Every single day, there are a number of paid apps that are free that day. And some of these apps will be as low as 99 cents. Some of those apps will be more than $10, but they're only free for that day. They expire. And so that's going to be our lab for today. So go and check out App Advice Daily. App Advice Daily. It's in the iOS store. And I did not look today to see what the apps were. So I did see, but they're great. The first version of Filmic Pro that I actually got was on this website, on this app. And so at the time, I think it was like $9 or something like that. But I believe that Filmic Pro is now, I think, $15. It's a fantastic app. We're not here to talk about Filmic Pro, but it is a fantastic app. So I'm going to, again, thank Emily. Thank you so much. This is just what I wanted. I wanted us to have a conversation. And I think that everyone here and those who are listening will be able to glean something positive to help their child, grandchild, niece, nephew, or whomever with some, when we're going to have additional conversations in education. And really, this whole thing is really about education, because it's basically about technology and using technology to make everybody get better, and just realizing whatever you have, you can use whatever you have to get better with your existing technology. And so thank you, everybody, so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Emily, again. Thank you, Chris. And so I just want to lift up a couple of special thanks. So Global Family and Friends, thank you so much. Alex Lindsay and the office hour members and family, I'm going to say, thank you so much. The DVE store, who powers this event, Video 360 Webcam 3C 4K, which I'm using. And again, I lift them up because in the beginning of the pandemic, they were supplying teachers with webcams when teachers could not find webcams. So I think it's important to mention them, and I will continue to mention them. Conversations with Tony Mobley will continue, and we have launched our website today. And we want to thank Mr. Ken Jordan so much for doing that. And I know that he was not feeling particularly well over the last several weeks, and he went on and did that for us anyway. And I just want to say to you, sir, thank you so much. I know that he knows that I was not in a rush for him to do this because I wanted him to get better, but he decided he was going to go ahead and do it anyway. So thank you, Ken. Appreciate it. And as I did last week, I'm going to ask my good friend to have the last word. Before I do that, I just want to say that he knows that I love him, but I just can't pronounce his name right for nothing. Every time I say it different. I'm going to try one more time tonight, and then Lou, let me try one more time, and then you can talk, Lou. Trelloc. Now I say there's no R in it. Why am I saying Trelloc? Lock. Okay, go ahead, Lou. I'm sorry.
No, we can't hear you, Lou.
Yeah, sorry. I was just gonna say we need Emily or Laura or someone to, or even Jeff, someone to help us with a phonetic for you to help remember how to.
Absolutely. It's not a matter of not wanting to say it. I can't hear it. Even when other people are pronouncing it, I can't hear it for some reason.
It's our southern brains. We don't do combinations of vowels and letters like that, Tony.
Well, let me say this, John. I'm going to say this. If I've learned anything from office hours, I've learned that there is nothing you cannot master given enough time and resources.
And
Right,
effort.
Alex?
And effort.
So, yes, Laura.
Well,
Let me take the good old educator try at it, and Talak can correct me if I'm wrong. Think of it this way: TA space LOCK. Talak.
nope.
Nope, that's not it.
Okay, so I'm wrong. Sorry.
It's
I
Tlaloc.
want to try.
And there's only 2 syllables. And the hardest thing for the English language tongue is to put together the T and the L. And that's what you're struggling with. And so don't worry about it. I've been dealing with this all my life. So if somebody says, "Hey, you," I usually turn around. I know you're probably talking to me, or if I hear something that isn't quite right, I know you're talking to me. So don't worry about it. It's all good. I'll keep saying it, and then someday you'll hear it, and it'll come through. And I just wanted to say, Tony, thank you so much for making this thing, bringing us together, making this thing happen, having us talk about these important things in this way, and bringing these important pieces of knowledge and these important thought processes forward into a conversation, so that we can help our students, so that we can help our parents, so that we can help ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And so we're going to say a good evening to everyone. And the website is up. It is active. I've been sharing it all. Ken, I've been sharing it all over the place. I've been sharing it all over the place. Anybody I know now has seen the website. So, and I think it's important too.
What's the URL?
The URL. Oh, you want me to put the URL in?
Yeah, tell us what it is.
Yeah. Conversations with Tony
Mobley.
Hey, you're burying the lead.
Or you don't have to add Mobley. It works with both. No.
Okay.
It's a great looking website, and he said we're just beginning with it. So I encourage you all to take a look at it. I want to again say thank you so much to Dr. Hasmak Kogir for being with us last week and being here tonight. I know Emily is appreciative of you being awake at 3 a.m. to be with us tonight. And so, Michael, you're going to have the last word, actually. So go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say that link that Emily put up doesn't work.
You can find the link on the website on Conversations with Tony. It's the link below her video. Just go to those resources.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Good night. We will see you next week. Laura Thompson is our very special guest next week. And I will be reaching out to others that are here and in the attendees as special guests in the coming weeks.